In Project 2, we'll take a look at some additional formulas and functions for our worksheet. And if you'll notice on page 45, we're going to look at the various parts of a function. We've already used some of the functions, but this kind of breaks down what a function actually consists of. And if you'll notice, a function kind of operates on an argument. So we've already used the sum function and the average function, and every function has various parts. And the first part is your equal sign. Second part is the name of the function, which in our particular cases we've used sum and average. And then in parentheses we've used a range of cells that will either sum or average those particular numbers within that range. You can also have a constant number within that argument, and if you'll notice in the middle of page 45, the sum function, it's in the second paragraph there, it has equal sum B3 through B9, which would add the numbers that are in cells B3 through 9, and then the 100, which is the constant, would be added to that range of cells. So there's a variety of combinations that you can use within a function. They've kind of simplified it for us here on page 45. And then when the formula is actually calculated, that process is referred to as returning the result. So it's basically just calculating the formula, and then the result is put in a specific cell wherever you've placed the formula or function. You can get to these functions. We've gone through the editing group using the sum button within that group to get to our functions, but there are a variety of ways to get to the function area of Excel. And we can either go to the formulas tab, which you see on your screen here. There's all kinds of functions within the function library. They've categorized them. I believe there's 12 different categories. I believe there's over 200 functions within Excel. So we're only going to look at a few of those, but you can get to each one of the categories on your ribbon. You can also go to the Insert Function button, and then finally on the formula bar you can click on the FX, which is the insert function as well. But all those get you to the Insert Function dialog box, which allows you to search for a function. If you know the name of the function, you can certainly type that in here and click Go. You can also go to the various categories, the 12 categories that I was referring to previously. If you choose a category, then the functions in that category are listed in the Select a Function list, and they're all in alphabetical order. If you don't know the name of the function or the specific name of the function, you don't know what category it's in, the best thing to do is go to the All category. That lists over the, I don't know how many it is, it's over 200 functions in Excel, and again they're all in alphabetical order so you can quickly get to them. On page 46 they give you further explanation of the information that's within the Insert Function dialog box, and you may want to go through and review that as well. In projects 2 and 3 we're going to take a look at the average, max, min, count functions. Actually just project 2 are the ones that we're going to do that, and then project 3 we'll take a look at some additional functions as well. In project 2A we are going to open up a file from the student data files disk. I've already done that. It's called, let me cancel out this, it was called DW Tests, and then I've already renamed it to the Excel Level 1 Chapter 2 Project 2 DW Tests file name. If you'll notice, dollar-wise financial services is the worksheet that we'll be using. The employees are listed here. Evidently there are test percentages that have been given to each one of these employees. We're going to determine what the average amounts are for each one of the employees. So we're going to use the average function to determine that. And if you click in cell E4, the average function, again we can get to it a variety of ways. If we go to the ribbon, I'll just start with one way here, Insert Function. That will take us to the Insert Function dialog box. The category that average is going to be located in is the statistical category, but again if you don't remember that, just click All and then you can go to the average function in your list. We're going to choose the average function under the Select a Function area, and then you can either double click on that or you can click to select it and then click OK. That'll bring up the function arguments dialog box, which allows you to put in the range of cells that you want to include for the average. and in our case we want to select the B4 through D4, and it's automatically anticipated what cells that it wants to include in your average function, which is correct, but if it weren't, you would just reselect and click and drag and reselect, or you can type in the amounts or the range that you want in the number one text box. If you had more than one argument, you would use the number 2 text box as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, we don't have to do anything now, we're just going to click OK, and that shows us that we have an 87% based on these 3 numbers for the first employee. And the average function actually will go in every cell for each of the employees, so we can fill down. Again, I'm going to double click on the fill handle so it automatically fills down to the last employee. And then we'll go ahead and save, just update the changes that have been made. And they're going to give us some examples of, again, using the what if analysis. And if we go to cell B9, just Terry Fisher, let's say that on test 1, instead of 50%, he or she actually got 70%. And notice immediately that updates the averages there. C9, again, if the 52% is incorrect, 70. And then finally 70, she got 70, or he or she got 70 on each one of the tests. We've gone through and changed those. The average then is 70. B10, they want us to change that from 62 to 70. B14, Claude, rather than a 0, they received a 70%. Test 3, Claude received another 70%, and then Douglas, instead of the 0%, received a 70%. So those what ifs, what if the test percentage change, how does that affect average? So we were able to make those changes and have it update quickly. In project 2B, we're going to look at the maximum and minimum functions, max and min, and we're going to use those, place those down in cell A19. So we need to actually put in labels that will identify what our numbers are going to be. So I'm going to put in highest test average, which again will reflect the max function. So it'll be the lowest test average, which will be min, and then the average of all tests will be the third one. And actually below that we'll probably count them. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. But in project 2C we'll also add another couple of labels at the bottom. So the highest test average, we're looking at the average here. We want to know what the highest average is in that range of cells. So we're going to use the max function for that. And I'm in cell B19. That's where I want the results to appear. So with that, a couple of things I want to just mention too. We can go back to the insert function, go to the function dialog box through the formula bar. You can also, remember back on the Home tab, in the Sum button, click on the drop down arrow. This has some common functions that are used. If they're not listed here, you can go to More Functions. That will again take you into the Insert Function dialog box. So you've got lots of ways that you can get to these functions. And again, we're looking at max. Now let me cancel out this for just a minute, because it looks like in project 2B on page 49 they're wanting us to type in the formula rather than using the function wizard. So let me show you that for just a minute, because they're going to allow us to see the autocomplete feature being used. So again, with all functions you start them out with an equal sign, and then the name of the function is max. So I'm going to put in an M, and notice as soon as you do that the autocomplete pops up and it lists out all of the functions that start with an M. So those are all listed there. I know you can't see them all because it's cutting it off at the bottom, but you should be able to see max. And so we just double click on that. That puts max in here. It shows you the syntax or the parts of the max function. And it's looking now for the range of cells that you want to include. So I'm going to select E4 through E16. And then you really do put a right parenthesis on there, but Excel has made it convenient for us so that if we just press enter, it automatically puts the right parenthesis on there for us. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the lowest test average. This time they do want us to use the function wizard. I'm going to go in through this button on the Home tab and choose min. Again, it's grabbing cells that are around it that contain numbers. We don't want that. We want the minimum for our average at the top, which is E4 through E16. Again, I'm just going to press enter, and that gives me the minimum average or the lowest test average for that range of cells. And then the average, again, we'll use this one. And we'll look for average. It's got the incorrect average there, so I'm going to show you something here. If you click on the button to the right here, this is a minimize. That minimizes your dialog box, and then you're able to see a little bit more of your worksheet. We want E4 through E16. With the dialog box minimized, if you click on that same button, it'll maximize it back out. And you can see E4 through E16. And then I'm going to click OK. That's the average of all the test averages that you see there. Next, we're going to make some changes to some of these cells that we changed previously. In B14, we're going to change that back to 0%. The D14 for this clause is still going to be 0%. And then D16, evidently, this particular person didn't have to take the test or whatever, so they're going to put in non-applicable for that particular person. By doing that, we'll get some ways of seeing how the count function is actually applied within a range of cells, and that's the next function that we're going to look at on page 50 in project 2C. It says the count function will count numeric values in a range. Okay, so every cell that has numbers in it, it'll count those particular numbers. However, if you have text in a cell, it will not count those particular cells. Okay, so this NA is not going to be counted when we look at that. So we're going to use the count function by taking a look at how many people completed each of the tests. And we're going to take a look at test 2 and test 3. So I'm going to drop down to cell A22. We're going to type in test 2 completed. Right below that, test 3 completed. So we want to determine how many employees actually completed both test 2 and 3. And again, we're going to use the count function, and so we want to determine that in cell B22 is where we want the result to appear. And again, they want us to type in the count function. So if you type in an equal sign, start it with a C, it'll list out all the C's. You scroll down a little bit, and you should see count. I'm just going to double click on that. And then the range for test 2 is C4 through C16. And then I'm going to press enter. So there's 13 employees, and we know that if you go through and count it, you can see that there's 13 employees. All of them have numbers in it. Test 3 will do the same thing, but should come up probably with 12 people that took the test, since it will not count D16 since it has text in it. Okay, so test 3, this time let's use the function wizard. And I'm going to click down here, type in a C. That'll immediately take me to the C's in the list. And there's count. I'm going to double click on that. And it's got B19 through B22, which is incorrect range. Okay, so we want to minimize this. I want to try to find test 3. Should be D4 through D16. And again, I'm going to maximize the dialog box out, D4 through D16. Click OK. And now it's showing 12 people, because again, it's only counting the cells that has numbers or numeric values in them. We'll go ahead and save this again, and then we'll make changes to these numbers. They want us to change the numbers again. Claude has now taken the test, 68%, 70 for test 3, and then the NA, evidently that person's taken the test for the 55%. So we'll save that again. We have several formulas in this worksheet. When you print out your sheet, it's obviously going to give you the values in these cells, but if for some reason you want to display the formulas in the worksheet so you can actually see where the formulas are and take a look at how the calculations were made. They talk about for auditing purposes, sometimes they want to go in and check to see how numbers were calculated. To display your formulas, one way to do that is by pressing the control key along with, they call it the grave accent, which is to the left of the number 1. We also call it the left apostrophe. But if you'll notice, that shows where all the formulas are located, the average there, and then all the max, min, and the counts are shown there as well. So you don't see the values or the results, but you see the formulas, and that's a pretty good tool at times to have printed out and just show coworkers, or again for auditing purposes, just to make sure that the formulas are accurate. And then to turn those off, press Control left apostrophe again. And I believe if you go to rather than the accent symbol, I was looking for the turning off of formulas from the ribbon. I'm not seeing that from the ribbon. However, if you go in under the File tab, go to Options, in the categories on the left, the Advanced category, let's see if I can get this for you. If you scroll down just a little bit here, display options for this worksheet show formulas and cells rather than their calculated results. That's another method, but honestly, if you can remember the Control accent, that'll be a little bit easier than making your way through all these levels. So I'm just going to cancel out that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this again. I've converted it back so that the results are showing there. So we'll save it again before starting project 3.